I'm here to talk to you guys about porn. How do we feel about that? Are we ready for, is it too early for a porn talk? Have you had your coffee, your breakfast? Yeah. Are you gonna be fine? Good. So I loved your talk, Christina, because you're bringing up the demand, right? The people actually purchasing others for sex, which is the whole problem. It would not exist without that. So that's the main foundation that we have to tackle. And what I have seen in research, because when I started working with this issue, I was only 17. I just moved from Norway to Sweden. And I did it's the whole thing. It's like a big project when you end high school in Sweden. So I had to spend 100 hours doing whatever I wanted. And first I thought, I'm gonna go abroad, I'm gonna do the diving license, get some tan, just call it a project. But then I realized, okay, no, I should actually do something a bit more significant. And so I chose to do a fundraising event, and it just, one thing led to another, and human trafficking, which was then specifically sex trafficking, was my main sort of focus area with the project. And then that led to me starting an organization and blah, blah, blah. So for me, it really started with sex trafficking. But then realizing, how is sex trafficking actually expressed? Okay, it is expressed as, it looks like prostitution, right? Okay, so then I have to start talking about prostitution. Who is the driving force behind prostitution? Which is what Christina addressed, which is the demand, right? People paying for sex. Why are people paying for sex? What is up with these attitudes? What is creating these attitudes? And the research is very clear, and we have more than 50 years actually of research showing the great link between porn and the purchase of sex. There's a direct link there. It actually increases the statistical likelihood of paying for sex when you have consumed porn. That does not mean that everybody who watches porn is going to go out and pay for sex, right? Because mostly everyone, almost, especially looking at teenagers, are at some point going to see porn. Not every one of them obviously is going to go out and pay for sex. We know that, but there's a link and we have to address it. And speaking of attitudes, which you also addressed so well, porn absolutely create these attitudes, which we are trying to combat. We're trying to equality, we have to fight demand, we have to talk about prostitution. But on the other hand, our kids and our youth have absolutely free access to online prostitution, documented prostitution, which is actually what porn is. So on one hand, we're talking about all this issue, and on the other hand, we're feeding kids with Pornhub, basically. How long does it take to reach Pornhub, you think? How many minutes or seconds? I asked the school class about this, and the students basically said, how good of a Wi-Fi connection do you have? Yeah, so that is what determines. So let's talk porn, right? I think it's so important, and all of the kids and the youth that I've met throughout the years talking about this absolutely agree. They too they're consuming it, but they're not having the conversations. So the adults aren't addressing this with them. Yet this is their number one source for sex education, And oftentimes, this is what I hear all the time, is that someone would tell me that, I was just curious, right? I just wanted to learn about sex. I was just curious about it. And when Googling this, looking for sex and looking for inspiration, what they are envisioning is not at all what Pornhub is then offering them, right? That gap is huge. So Pornhub is absolutely one of the main sex educators that we have today. And, then we absolutely have to talk about that too. So just to give you a definition, porn is basically it's material intended to cause sexual excitement and arousal, right? So that's the broad definition. And going online, viewing porn on Pornhub, or whichever tube site you might be accessing, is absolutely going to cause sexual arousement for most of us, because that's just how the brain works. And so I always tell young people, meeting them, I always say that you're so normal for liking porn, because that is how your brain is wired. It's going to be very excited. It's going to be lighting up like a Christmas tree when exposed to porn. So being interested in porn, it's not something that we should and can shame, because it's normal. Do you know what I mean? It's totally normal. But then we have to still talk about the consequences and the possible impacts. And we also have to address the fact that most of the people that I've met throughout the years, the first time they were exposed to porn, I mean, I'm hearing ages like 6, 7, 8, 9. You know, they haven't even developed their own sexuality. And here Pornhub is offering them a complete framework of this is what is turning you on. This is what real men likes to do to women. This is what women like for men to do to them. So they're not even, getting sort of the opportunity to form their own experience and their own thoughts and their own sexuality before Pornhub or whatever tube site is there hijacking their sexuality. And I'm seeing this, and I've seen it for the past 20 years working with this issue. Do you guys remember I'm born 89. Do I have any 80s people in the house? Yes, some? Okay, so you remember the Playboy magazines, right? Yeah. Anybody younger than that who has no idea even what Playboy is? Any 90s people? 2000 people? No, you guys are older than me, is what I'm getting here. I remember, I was 12 when my best friends in school, one lunch break, they were like, we have to show you something. And they had brought a Playboy magazine. And that was still, that's still images. It's like nothing is moving, nothing is going on, there's no activity in that sense. And yet it made such an impact on me. And I will never forget it. And I know I was about 12 years old. Imagine then, this story that I heard from a mom, she told me that her son, 8 years old, he was curious. And he wanted to Google and just look things up online. And he came out his room bursting, crying, and she was just like, what's going on? What happened? And it turned out that he had stumbled upon online porn. And his concern, this 8-year-old boy, this concern of him was that he was so distraught by what he had seen, he thought that what he had seen in porn is what his mom and dad did to each other in the bedroom. And I'm hearing these stories all the time. So you have all of these kids and you stumbling upon porn, and then on the other hand, you have us adults not even addressing this with them, And I think part of the reason here is the gap, right? I'm born 89, and I grew up with sort of Playboy. And now the generation, they don't even know what Playboy is, right? So the gap is huge. So I think that is part of the reason why it's also partially, I guess, difficult to talk about. But again, I would really just emphasize that, yes, it is material intended to cause sexual excitement, but it's absolutely documented prostitution, right? The only difference is the camera. That is the only difference. It's just being broadcasted, and it's being viewed, and it's accessible to everyone. But it's still money in exchange for sex. That's the sort of trade that still goes on. That's some Latin for you. Graphine, to write, showcase, and depict. And porno means person in prostitution. So it basically is telling, the name itself is telling us that this is depicted, showcased, documented prostitution. People in prostitution are being documented. So this is the average year of somebody actually consuming porn. So there's a difference between consumption and exposure, right? So you might be exposed to it at 6, 7, 8, but then most of young people will start consuming it when they hit puberty, right? Because that's when it gets really interesting. This is in Sweden, so I'm just giving you some numbers here. So, you see the numbers. It's quite high, right? Is this higher than what you thought? It is higher. Who here is surprised by this? Are you surprised? Okay, I'm seeing, I'm not surprised. Yeah. I agree, it's high. What we're seeing in Sweden, actually, which is a positive thing, and I like to stay on a positive note, is that there's actually sort of a decline. You can sort of see it's both a positive thing and a negative thing, because this is also something that is also increasing. So I'm going to explain this. What we're seeing is that we have one group of young people saying, actually, this is messing with my life, and it's like impacting my sexuality, and I don't like it, and I want to quit it. So we have one group who has either sort of changed, like they're not consuming it as much, or they have completely stopped. But we have this, and this is more concerning. We have another group, which is sort of the high consumer group, who will consume porn on a regular basis, a lot of, most of the days during the week. And that group has increased. So it's sort of these two groups. And I really think that the people consuming porn on a regular basis, I mean, we're talking about teenagers, right? 12 to 14-ish. That is absolutely a group that we have to address and include in whatever work we're doing. And always keep in mind to always ask questions about porn whenever we're meeting young people, whenever we're, in some capacity working with young people, to include this issue and see, could this possibly be a factor impacting their health and their life? I met so many young people who tell me during their high school years of being possibly even addicted to pornography, which is absolutely a real thing for a lot of people, the addiction part of it, is that they will tell me that they are losing sleep, and then they're sick the next day, and they're in school, and they're tired, and they're struggling with their homework, and it absolutely is impacting their whole childhood and teenage years. And these are the girls. I don't want to forget the girls, so just to go back to show you, these are the guys, right? So more guys are viewing porn than girls. Shocker. I mean, it is absolutely being produced for the male gaze, right? Pornhub loves to, I'm targeting Pornhub, but I mean, they are, and they have been, like nobody has tackled them. They have been such a dominant player in this field, and we haven't even known, like, who is running Pornhub. It's like one of the biggest companies. MindGeek is the owner. They've changed their name now, and it's, I don't know, have you guys followed the whole Pornhub sort of in 2020? Okay. We have to meet another day. I'll tell you about that. But it's a big thing that happened in 2020 where it was like a huge campaign basically targeting Pornhub and finding out who are the owners, who is MindGeek, like who's running this major company. And if you go online and look at MindGeek's webpage, you won't even see a single thing about porn, yet they're the biggest porn owning company in the world. So this, this sort of, these companies have been under the radar for so many years. And I'm just like, where are all the business journalists looking into this, right? And what happened in 2020, luckily, is that the New York Times did a huge article on Pornhub. And it was especially connected to a story about a girl named Rose who had her rape uploaded to Pornhub. Because anybody, it's like a tube site, so anybody could upload to Pornhub. You didn't have to even like submit your ID. You could just, here's my content, here, upload it, and check, and it was published. So Rose had her rape uploaded to Pornhub by the people who raped her, and she wrote to Pornhub and said, you guys have to take this down, and they did not even reply to her. And it took, I think, 6 months, and she had to pretend to be a lawyer for them to even do anything. So that's what the New York Times article really highlighted, and that really brought, and I think there are people in jail now, and it's been a whole thing. But yeah, you should Google if you're interested in like Pornhub 2020 and see sort of the whole spectacle. This is actually here. This is Estonia. Yeah, so we're having, this is sort of like when it starts in Estonia. And then it increases. And I can pretty much guarantee you guys that it's going to be the similar number in like all of the countries where kids and youth have access to internet. They're going to be able to access porn. So here are the main. I just wanted to tell you guys what the young people are telling me about their main reasons for consuming porn. So sexual satisfaction, to reduce stress, worry, and anxiety. So it's a way of coping with difficult emotions and finding sort of regulation with porn. Escaping, numbing. This is sort of like a freeze response using porn. This idea that everyone watches porn, so I have to watch porn, like it's so normalized. And it's so sort of accepted, and it's like part of, especially for a teenage boy, it's like this is how you grow up to be a man, like you start watching porn and like, it's supposed to shape your sexuality, is this whole idea. Easy to access, right? It take like a second to find porn. To find inspirations, I'm not going to be completely bashing it. I do see a lot of people saying that, I wanted to have inspiration, I wanted to explore my own sexuality, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. What I am saying is this the only thing we have to offer kids and youth who want to explore their own sexuality? Are we just going to leave them with like the endlessness of online porn? Is there no other way for us to help kids and youth explore and find inspiration? I have to believe that there is other ways for us to do that. And compulsive use or addiction, whatever you want to call it. That's like a whole debate, and it has been a debate in Sweden especially. Is it an addiction? Can you say it's an addiction? And yeah, but I mean, it has such similar traits to, whichever drug cocaine. You can see so many similarities to how the brain will react to cocaine and to porn. So it's like the Christmas tree, just like really blowing up. I wanted to show you, this is an old study, super, super old, so keep that in mind. And this isn't even about online porn. This is actually about rented movie. Like this is like the VHS. Do you guys remember yes, that's what we're talking about. Going to like, do you guys remember, have you ever been in like one of the shops, like when you were like little and there was like this, you were like renting a movie and there was like this closed off area with like the curtains, like, do you remember like the drapes with the pearls and yeah, I really remember it. And no, that was like the adult section, right? So this is a study from that time, so keep that in mind. But so they were looking at the 50 most popular films, and then they selected 304 scenes, randomly selected 304 scenes, and this is what they found. Almost 9 out of 10 of these scenes contained physical aggression. And the definition of physical aggression in this study is, what do you think? If I can actually ask you guys to guess. What is what was the physical aggression? What kind of physical acts was included, do you guys think? Any guess? Who here believes, let's say, do you think, like, was it big, like punching? Like, what kind of aggression are we talking about, do you guys think? Slapping? Yep, that's included.
Some sort of strangling?
Yep, choking, correct.
Non-consensual sex.
Yeah, no, but that could be, yeah. But in this definition, slapping, and especially choking, yes, and even spanking, I think. So it's quite, and not judging the actual acts, but that's like their definition of it, yeah. So that's 9 out of 10. Almost half verbal aggression. So that basically was, I think, the two main words being used in these scenes were bitch and slut, and obviously then directed at the women, right? So that was the target. Each scene had, like in general, they had 12 of these either physical or verbal attacks, and then one scene had up to 128 of these physical and verbal aggression attacks. Obviously, this is what the recipients, the recipients were female mostly. And this is what I really want you guys to take away from this study, is that had I gone up to either of you now and I would have slapped you or choked you, you would have called the police, right? I would have been reported. In porn, back here, we're not even talking about online porn. Like, this is the olden days, Back here, most of the people being targeted, physically or verbally, would respond either neutral or they would respond with a positive response. So, which is like the opposite of what we would have seen in everyday life, right? Had I slapped you now, you would have been mad at me and you would have called the cops on me, right? In porn, what we're being taught as consumers is that we're turned on by this, or at least we're neutral. We're not mad about it, We're not mad if somebody is choking a woman in porn. That is the message, basically. If a man was the target of this physical or verbal aggression, it was a 4 times more likelihood that he would respond negatively. So the guys in porn, they are not going to accept being choked. That's the message. But the girl, she's going to accept, say nothing, or she's even going to ask for more, you know? Are you guys seeing choking? Is that like a thing here in Estonia that is being talked about among young people? Do you know if that's like an issue that's coming up? Yeah. Definitely in Sweden, we're seeing that, for sure. I mean, we've had cases of teenagers being choked to death during a sex act. So that is definitely, and it has become so incredibly normal, I would say. Like being in a classroom talking to young people about this, like choking is just part of everyday sex life. It's so incredibly normal. And again, I just sort of, I don't want to be judging what turns anybody on, okay? Just to sort of be clear on that. It's not about that. It is about young people being able to choose for themselves what turns them on, right? Because they didn't even get a chance to explore this before porn was there telling them, you like to be choked. So I think that's sort of the core issue. Porn on the brain, similar effects to drugs, hijacking the reward pathway, and it changes our brain, physically changes our brain, actually. It is sort of creating these new pathways, neural pathways in our brain. And there's like an expression, I'm sure you've heard it in neuroscience, that the neurons that fire together wire together. So connecting pleasure with porn is gonna create this pathway, and it soon becomes this sort of, it's not just like a little pathway, like a stumbling down in the woods kind of pathway, it becomes a highway. So your brain is gonna be super quick to want to reach for porn whenever you're feeling whatever is causing your consumption of porn. So the nerve cells rewiring, increase in tolerance. This is super, super important because what we're seeing is that the brain, and this is a normal, healthy brain, and we're all gonna have, pretty much all of us are gonna have the same response to porn. So let's do me as an example. If I were to consume porn, my brain would at first say, my God, this is exciting. Oh my Lord, I've never seen anything like this. I'm super, 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 super excited. And I wanna remember this, and I wanna get back to this. And at first, it's only gonna take like a photo, for me to get that excited. After a while, my brain is gonna think, whoa, hold up, this is too much. We cannot have all of this pleasure, dopamine, arousal going on all the time. I have to sort of find a way to balance this. So my brain will actually then shut off the receptors that are receiving and sort of registering the dopamine. So those will be shut off, which means that I have to require more dopamine to even feel the same kick as I did in the beginning. So that's sort of the process behind it, which is why a lot of people are telling in studies and just like this in general that I started off with A and I'm here at C now. And I never thought I would consume this type of porn, but this type of porn that I started with seems like vanilla, this is so boring. Because you're actually bored by it. Like the brain is bored by it because you've gotten used to it and it does not give you the same kick at all anymore. So you have to come here if you want to experience the same arousal that you did in the beginning. And this is key, obviously, because if you are 25, which is when your cortex has been sort of fully developed, you will be better at handling porn. That is just the way our brain works. Which is also why we're so keen on not having kids and youth use alcohol too soon, right? Like we have age limits, like we have sort of a system in place for how to buy it, when to buy it, who can buy it. It's based on research, and it's the same thing here, that the younger you are, the more sensitive you are to dopamine. And keep in mind then that kids and youth are like 6, 7, 8, 11, 12-ish, the first time they're actually seeing porn and start using porn. So they're in their most sensitive area or sort of development stage, and then porn is right there telling them what turns them on. And it is shaping their attitudes, and it's absolutely impacting their views on equality, and women in particular, I would say. So this is Alex. He's telling us that he was 6 years old the first time I saw porn. Today I'm 19 and I still watch it. It's so easy to get hold of. It affects me in my everyday life. Yeah, you simply feel ashamed. You think poorly of yourself. You get really depressed in a way. You can think things like, no, I can't do this or that. It's difficult to describe this. You get lazy. You don't have the energy. You don't have the same drive to do certain things. It really is like a drug. For me, it has come and gone in phases. It's like having sober periods with relapses. And I'm just like, we can just use this story to like apply it to any issue, right? Alcohol, drugs, porn, like it's the same. He uses the same words like periods, relapses, sober, like, and the way that he's also explaining, I find it so interesting, like the way it is actually impacting his view of himself, right? Like his self-esteem. He really thinks that, I can't do this, and and he feels lazy, and it's just like, it's really getting to the motivation and like the joy of life, I would say, too. And I mean, can we afford a generation not being excited to be alive and to, explore their teenage years? I don't think we can afford it. Again, we have 50 years plus research on porn, and especially its impact on our attitudes. And I've been, throughout my working life, really, really focused on young people and their attitudes and how it's really, shaping the way we're viewing ourselves, and also, I would say, like our expectations of each other. And what we're seeing is that it's actually producing what we're calling in research sexually aggressive attitudes. And sexually aggressive attitudes is a risk factor for committing any sort of sexual offense. It does not mean that everybody, of course, it does not mean that everybody who's consuming porn is going to go out and rape someone. That's absolutely not what we're saying. But it increases the likelihood, and there's a connection here. And that connection is what we absolutely have to include and talk about. You can also see in the research that porn can produce what we're calling rape myths, which is basically that we think that somebody dressing a certain way, behaving a certain way, that is sort of the reason for the rape happening, right? So again, porn is really, I would say, it's taking away the actual issue of rape, which is the rapist, right? The perpetrator. But here, porn is sort of like making that person invisible, in a sense. This is also key in the research that we have on porn and our attitudes, that it is reducing our empathy for people. And it's absolutely also shaping the way that we are viewing people in prostitution, because this is sort of the categorization that happens with long-term porn consumption. And again, we're talking about likelihood, statistical likelihood, connections, etc. We're not being black and white here saying this leads automatically to this. There are a lot of factors impacting sexual crime and stuff like that. But this categorization is what we're seeing also in the research, that you tend to want to divide women into two groups. So you tend to want to say that this is one group. These are the Madonnas. These are the sisters, the wives, the neighbors, the women that are sort of pure and that we cannot touch, and nobody gets to touch my sister, and I'm going to protect her. But this woman who dresses like this, behaves like that, she's a whore and she deserves what came for her, right? So that sort of division and categorization is also what we're seeing in the research. This is also another thing we're seeing in the research, that there's a greater likelihood, a statistical likelihood of actually trying to force somebody into doing something that they do not want to do. So porn and consent, that is two things that we absolutely have to include and talk about and sort of link together. And this one, which is directly in response to what Christina was teaching us about the demand side, right? So porn is statistically increasing the likelihood of somebody paying for sex. Again, it does not mean that you're automatically going to go out and pay for sex, but it is a likelihood statistically being increased. We cannot afford that if we want to address prostitution, right? So we have to talk about porn if we also want to address demand for prostitution. Another important finding from the research regarding our expectations or sex expectations, it basically talks about how you're more critical towards how you look, like you are harsher on yourself, really, comparing yourself to what you're seeing in porn. Also, the expectations on your partner seem to change, that you want to imitate porn, you want to try out what you're seeing in porn, which is totally, in a sense, normal, if you get what I'm saying, because it has rewired your brain, and now you're taught to think that this thing that you've seen in porn is hot. So, of course you want to try this, right? It's just mathematics by now. The choking issue that we just talked about, and again, this is also, I think, just a key thing. And I've seen this and I've heard this for so many years for like talking to young people, and they're basically telling me about this sort of dilemma that appears, where if you had like let's say, because most of this research is like heterosexual, boys and girls, so you have a couple, and the boy will think that she wants to be choked, because I've seen that in porn, I've learned that she likes that, so I'm going to choke her. But the boy, on the other hand, will oftentimes also then feel like, I actually don't want to do this, it feels sort of wrong, but I'm doing it because I think she wants it. But she thinks that I have to want this, because I've also seen this in porn, and you seem to like it, and you're doing it, and I want to please you. And so that, then suddenly you have two people who actually, they wouldn't even do it had porn not told them to do it. So I just want to sort of leave you with a few thoughts and questions to remember to talk about whether porn is sex education, whether we sort of think it's a good idea to have porn as sex education, or if we want to offer something else to young people. Keep in mind the sexually aggressive attitudes being produced, the addiction and the compulsive use, which is also something I think we shouldn't forget. And the rape myths, I think it's equally important to also, because then porn and prostitution and equality, whatever we're talking about, it's so intertwined with each other. Rape, consent, all of this is super, super, it's like a big cake, it's just like pieces of the pie, is what it is. Finally, before we open up for a few questions, I just want to give you a few tips on how to talk porn with young people. And I would say first off, because I guess, anybody parents here? Anybody has kids? Yeah. So you might want to feel after today you're going to go home and you're just going to be like, okay, we have to, and you're just like, big porn talk, here we go. You might not want to do that. You might want to, if you need to sort of decompress, go out, hug a tree, hit a tree, whatever you need to do, but just we don't want the children's hair to be blowing, we're just like a tornado in our home this afternoon with all of the info that we've gotten today. So I would just call a friend, do whatever you need to do to sort of, instead of having the big porn talk, I would just include little bits here and there. And just show our children that we know about this reality and we are equipped to talk about it. And whenever, if ever you see something, I'm here, I can talk about it. It does not scare me. I'm not going to punish you for watching porn. I'm not going to take away your phone. I'm not going to cut the wire, for the Wi-Fi. I'm gonna be your ally in this, and you are not to blame, because porn was not created by children, right? Adults created the porn industry, not the kids. Also, another just a good tip is just to connect with current events, what, I read about this case, and and just, keep sort of including some conversations around porn. This is what I do. I ask kids in a classroom to show me, what do you guys do online? Tell me the scariest thing, the funnest thing, the best thing, the worst thing. And also then, of course, not only talk about, what is the worst thing that you do online, really talk about the good stuff as well, and to understand that kids and youth are online for a reason. It's fun, it's explorative, it's, you get inspiration, you can learn things. Kids today and their English, they're excellent at English, and that's partially thanks to YouTube, I think, because it's a lot of good things with being online as well. But yeah, we have to be able to keep two thoughts in the head at once. Help kids identify important adults. So if they feel I can't go to my mom or my dad, maybe there's somebody else in their life. Maybe you can be that important adult to a child. Keep their trust, obviously. Whatever they're sharing with us is not meant to be a Facebook post afterwards. This goes without saying, I think. And this is important, I think, to not shame and blame. Again, keep in mind that porn is created by and for adults. Not to kids. Thank you so much. You can find me on Instagram. I know you'll have to let me know if there are questions, but you can find me on Instagram. And if you guys want the slides, if you want more research, if you want the sources, whatever, just let me know and I will do my best to assist you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Maria. And thank you for the very important and well-presented presentation. But we have a lot of questions for you.
Awesome.
So I start. What are your thoughts about the OnlyFans?
Oh, such a good question. You guys went straight to OnlyFans? Wow. Okay. This is an experienced crowd. Where do I start? What do you guys think that I'm going to say? I mean, obviously, it's a problem, and it was created by the adult industry. If I'm going to be positive, I would say that it has sort of reduced the power of the producers in the porn industry on a general level. It has created more of a power balance in terms of the actual performer in porn or the people being prostituted in front of the camera, however you want to phrase that. So that's a good thing, but I mean, it's the sex industry still. I was in Las Vegas a year ago doing, because porn, like the whole porn industry has like an Oscars event every year in Vegas. Have you heard about that? The AVN show? Like it's like award show. It's a whole thing. Yes, mind blowing. And like a lot of the big porn companies are there and And this one guy from OnlyFans actually approached me and he was like, he didn't know like what, and I was like undercover sort of. And I felt it was so exciting. And he was like, hi, have you heard about OnlyFans? I was like, yes, I think I've heard of that. And he was like, here's my card. Are you on OnlyFans? And I was like, no, I'm not on OnlyFans, but tell me more. And he was like, well, and trying to like get me on OnlyFans. I was like, yeah, I will think about it. Thank you very much. And I went home and I emailed him and I told him who I actually was and like what I do for a living and And then the conversation stopped.
All right.
Yes, it did. And I asked for an interview. No, not happening. And I know that even the New York Times have tried to talk with them and it's just impossible. So, I mean, why are you hiding if it's like a legit company? Then, yeah.
Kommentaariks vahele, basically I worked for Pealtnägija, which is info program in public broadcasting, and I made a story about Estonians who use OnlyFans as a platform. So if you are interested, you can find it in the Jupiter, basically. There are a few stories and stories why people do this. So,
yeah.
And there is also one guy who was the influencer or the provider.
Yeah.
So very interesting thoughts about and you can check this out, what Estonians will think about. But the next question.
Interesting, yes.
Yeah. What should be the main message to young people about porn? How to explain it to them? Is there any kind of ABC?
ABC. I'm going to include an ABC the next time. That's actually really smart. What I do, and I cannot say that like this is the recipe, but what I do is that I simply raise the topic. And that is enough. And then they will start talking. And I think the most important thing that we can do as adults is listening. That's my main thing with kids, is that whenever I'm in a classroom, I'm speaking like 20% and they're speaking 80%, not like this. So, I'm doing the opposite. And it's really important, I think, to just talk about it. And I know that's like sounds so sort of, okay, we're talking about it. But that's the way, like you said, that's how we're addressing that. And that's how we're like changing the narrative and the norms and the attitudes. And most kids will not have any conversations about porn. They will consume it for years. And then according to Swedish research, 0% will talk to an adult. Or you can rephrase that and say that an adult, 0% of the adults will talk to a young person about this. So I guess listening, not telling them what to do in a sense, I would just say listening. Because most of the kids and youth today who have seen porn are able to say, this is actually quite problematic, They're not stupid, I would say. So just sort of get their own thoughts on it. That's my thing, yeah.
All right, thank you. What do you think, is there even such a thing as ethical porn?
Yes,
Pornography?
I have to say yes, because I've met a lot of people in porn who have told me that. And again, my sort of thing is that, okay, I'm gonna believe you. Do you know what I mean? I'm just gonna say, okay, great, good for you, then you are not part of what I'm talking about, okay? If this is working for you, fine. If this is ethical according to your ethics, great. But the majority of people in porn have experienced homelessness, domestic violence, they've grown up seeing abuse, they've been abused. Like, that is the majority of people in porn. And again, the impacts on the young people. So I'm sort of like, I'm just gonna be like, fine, and then I'm continuing on talking about what I'm talking about, yeah.
All right, there
It's
is
the
one,
easy way out, trust me, yes.
one more, like a theoretical or philosophical question. What would happen if there's gonna be no porn at all in the world?
Dream life, awesome. We'll just chill on a beach, we won't have to have a conference like this, and we can just relax. Honestly, I think we would have seen such an improvement in equality and in the way that we view women, and I think it would have a direct impact on prostitution and sex trafficking. Yeah, 100%. That's what the research is supporting. I do understand the question, because it's saying that, well, mostly men need an outlet for whatever is sort of driving their porn consumption or their purchasing of people in prostitution. I think that's sort of like a negative, like, is that how we are viewing men? Like, your only option is like porn or paying for somebody in prostitution? Like, women aren't doing this to that extent. So like, there are other human options for a man to sort of get an outlet or like whatever you need. Like, find a way to deal with it. Man, yeah.
All right. What do you think, why is the aggression so common in porn? And doesn't that mean that there is a demand for it?
Yeah.
So where does it come from?
Such a good question.
Thank you to the audience.
Yeah, you guys get the credit for that. Most of the porn producers that I've interviewed throughout the years have told me that they actually get bored as producers. So when I asked the porn producer, I was like, so who's driving this? Like, who's actually making sort of the aggression so popular and so hot in porn? And they're telling me that it's not the consumer, it's the producer. That's what they've told me. They are creating the content, and then as a consumer, again with the brain and the sort of, the normalization that happens, I think that's the explanation for the consumer. But in terms of the actual content, I think a lot of the reason is the producers being bored themselves. Like, they're also used to the vanilla sex, and they think, and they want to compete with each other, and it's a money thing, obviously. You want to create the most extreme content that you can, because that's going to increase your pockets. So I think it's money as well, for sure, yeah.
So there is a demand for pornography, but when our brains are rewired, is there a way out of here? Is it possible to produce some sort of okay porn? How to change it?
I mean, anybody wanna try? I have no idea. We've never seen that. So I don't know, to be honest. Again, with the brain, and especially with the young brain, I think that's a utopia. I think that's not actually doable. I think we might start with, okay, I'm gonna like be, consuming only ethical porn, but you're not gonna stay there according to your brain. You're gonna be bored, and you're gonna want the more aggressive stuff, and that's when the bad guys enter the scene, yeah.
Here is one very interesting question. People pretty much think with us, what do you think about porn which is produced by AI?
Yes.
So we have a lot of, this is the whole new section. We can basically create whatever we want.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I mean, AI or, the sort of the virtual reality, VR porn, like, I mean, I'm open to sort of any solution at this point. Of course, if that was the whole porn industry, then actual people wouldn't have to be in porn, sure. But again, for the consumer and the attitudes that this is producing and the connection to prostitution and to rape and to equality in general, it's still going to be an issue.
So we can go far, far away from the normality. We can basically create very nasty stuff there.
Yes, and don't be fooled, because that stuff where you're sort of implying maybe incest and like, you know, that exists in porn, in mainstream porn today. Like, I didn't even tell you about like what the actual, I mean, you have like 80 categories when you go online for like the big porn sites, and it's like all of these, it's racist porn, it's sexist porn, like you have slave porn, you have porn with dead people, like you have sort of, and you know, this whole like stepsister, stepbrother, stepfather, stepmother thing, it's huge in porn. So, and we're already doing that in the real life porn with the real life people, and we have to remember that these are real people in this industry, and yeah, they have to do these things, you know.
But what should countries do? How we regulate? Is there some sort of good practices?
Yeah, very good question. I think what we're seeing, like legally especially within the EU, is that age verification is a thing, or is beginning to become a thing, and that's absolutely something. If you're in the legal field, you should definitely look into that to see how, because that's not forbidding it. It's simply an age limit, you know? Like, it's a legal tool, just as we're using it with alcohol. We're saying, you know what, you're 8, it's not for you yet, you have to wait. So it's the same thing here. It's an age limit, which age verification, you have to verify your age. Let's use some kind of technology for that on the websites. And what we're also seeing legally is that the countries addressing this issue with age verification is saying to the porn sites that you have to adapt, you have to be able to tell us how you're verifying your user's age, and if you don't, or you know, if you're not able to do that, we're going to shut you down. So that's sort of the consequence, and I think that's a tool that we can use.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And ja mul on teile vaatamissoovitus, et vaadake TEDxi videot. Is this your TEDx video still?
Yes. It's called Let's Talk Porn
So
on
why
YouTube.
is it so popular?
Why is that so popular? Because
Over 10 million viewers.
Yeah, because it's because, and I'm still getting, you guys have no idea, I mean, it's like 5 years ago, that TED Talk or something, TEDx Talk, it's like still blowing up in my DMs from especially young boys and guys all over the world. I think I've gotten messages from like 90 different countries at this point. I mean, we're talking Saudi Arabia, we're talking Iraq, we're talking Afghanistan, we're talking Italy, Germany, the US, like Brazil, whatever. And what they're telling me, because the title is Let's Talk Porn, is that nobody has talked porn with them, and they've used porn all their lives, and they're like, finally, somebody is talking porn, is what they're feeling.
All right.
So I think that's why it's, because it's about porn. And
so this is the very global industry, so there isn't, we are part of the pool, so.
Yeah.
So thank you, Maria.
Thank you so much.
And
Thank
if
you
there
so
is
much.
a question,
Thank you so much.
we have a chance to talk directly. If people want to ask something directly from you, is it okay?
I'm here all day.
All right.
Pick me up. Yes.
All right. Thank you.
So
Thank
much.
you for the
Thank
presentation.
You so much.